Good morning to everyone. Thank you all for taking time to be here today. As you know, the General Assembly is in session, and we're down to the waning days of the session. We really have, next week is the last full 5-day week that we have. And then we'll have 4 more days out in the and are supposed to end on April the 13th. There's already a pool that's being put up to decide really when we will end, but mine is probably the midnight at the last stroke of April the 15th, because the Constitution says we must be finished by then. So between now and then, there are really only 2 issues that have got to be decided. Number one, how much money are we going to invest into our 2 large pension funds that we have with huge unfunded liabilities? One is the teachers fund, and the other fund is the KRS, which is the state workers, the county workers, the city workers. Both of them have a large liability that is unfunded. Item 2, create a budget. And once we determine how much money we're going to invest, and I 2 months ago when we had this meeting, I suggested that we would invest about $1 billion, and that's about what the number, as it turned out, that we're going to invest, which means we will invest more than what the on the retirement system, on the KRS, we will invest what we call now ARC Plus, meaning we'll give more than, at least that's what I feel like we need to do. And then for the teachers, we need to at least invest the ARC, which is the actuarial required contribution. Once we determine those 2 items, then the rest of it will all fall in place, as I see it. When the governor came to us in late January with his budget proposal, he had a number of his cabinets that he was going to cut a 9% on them in the future biennium. And the House of Representatives came back this week and gave to the General Assembly their vision of a budget. And a lot of those 9% cuts were restored. There were some cabinet secretaries who said, I can deal with it. And so the House left those 9% cuts in place. As I was told yesterday by the bipartisan budget staff, that Meals on Wheels got its 9% put back in place. Okay, I got a shaking hand, yes, over here to the left. So that's good. So I just wanted to make that report in regards to for the seniors services that the state is involved in. The last 2 issues that I want to share with you that are real important for our area, or at least my district in Kentucky, is the P3 legislation, which actually passed through the a committee Thursday afternoon late, and will be on the Senate floor. I look forward to that, because that P3 is public-private partnerships, and that is another tool in the toolbox for the Transportation Cabinet to build the I-69 bridge between Evansville and Henderson. You know, as it stands right now, we've got the I-69 corridor from Henderson all the way to Fulton. The road is either complete, or there are projects that are to be completed in the next 2-year cycle. And the last thing is LIFT, and the LIFT is a local option sales tax, which is a constitutional amendment, which goes to Senator Bowen's committee, and I have the pleasure to sit on. And I would ask him if he'd take time to tell us when and where we will deal with the LIFT issue.
Jatan, I was going to kind of stay with the script here. Jatan kind of gave us a little heads up on what he wanted us to talk about. But before that, I do want to say that obviously, and Dorsey highlighted this, the two big challenges that we have, obviously, is the budget and the pensions. And so I'm glad to know that, you know, we have come to the realization, we are recognizing, and we're not hopefully attempting to kick the can continually down the road on this pension issue. We've got over a $30 billion liability sitting out there. It's a huge challenge, and it doesn't just challenge us, it challenges you all, and it challenges your children and your grandchildren. So we have to measure up to this. You know, we have to address this, and I think, quite honestly, some of the cuts that were proposed in the governor's budget were in an attempt to address this most overarching issue that we have in Frankfort today. So we need to be vigilant about funding this property and getting on track to solvency in our pension issues. We'll get the budget out. I'm pretty confident of that. You know, unfortunately, we received it on with 8 days left in the session, so we're really in crunch time in the Senate, and there's folks in Frankfort as we speak working on it right now. I'm going to run through, because I did get this letter from the folks here at GRADD asking me to comment on some different pieces of legislation. So I'll do that, because I play by the rules, Jatan. I'm a follower, I'm not necessarily a leader, you know. You just give me something to say and I'll say it. Senate Bill 209, relating to agencies that discontinue participation in the Kentucky retirement system. So we have a lot of different entities that participate in the Kentucky retirement system, and so there's really two different topics we could talk about in that. If an entity or an agency that's participating in the Kentucky retirement system wants to exit the system, which I don't blame them, I'd probably want to do that too, you know, and set up my own system. They have to make sure that they pay all liabilities, that they cover any liabilities that they have before they exit. In other words, if there's some people retired that they're responsible for, they have to leave money in the system to cover their retirements. But then what Senate Bill 209 actually talks about is those systems that do exit the system, we give them the opportunity to provide the benefit in a new system on a pre-tax basis. Pretty simple. I'm sure you hadn't kept you folks up at night worried about that situation, but it was a little quirk in the system that came to me and wanted me to carry that bill. I'm chairman of state and local government, so I get a lot of cleanup measures, so to speak. You know, we pass bills session after session after session, and sometimes we don't get them just exactly right. The language is a little off here and there. We didn't cross that T, dot that I, and then it has to be cleaned up in the next session or subsequent sessions. And so that's part of my responsibility. You know, I got to go back and file these bills and clean them up for different agencies and cabinets and this type of thing. And that's what Senate Bill 209 basically did. Then another question that was proposed to me was Senate Bill 173 relating to commercial activities of government. Now, I will tell you, this is something that's really near and dear to my heart, government competing with private enterprise. And this is a bill that addresses that. You know, I made my living in the private sector, and it was tough enough competing against big box stores, much less the government. And so what this bill provides for, that if government is going to engage in a retail or wholesale activity, I mean, we're not stopping them from doing it, which personally I think we should, but we're not doing that with this bill. But what we're saying is, if government is going to go into that arena and compete in a retail or wholesale level, and believe it or not, it's happening. Now, I don't know if you all think about this, but we have one community in our state that went into the retail gasoline business. Now that sounds good because they promised everybody they'd be able to buy gas cheaper. But what about the people that were out there trying to make a living selling gas and competing against the government? That's not the role or function of government, in my opinion. So what this bill does is it simply says that if government elects to compete in that arena, in retail or wholesale sales, then they have to go through a certain procedure to do it. They have to have a hearing, engage the public in it. They're bound by certain parameters, just like private enterprise would be. So it's really a very fair and equitable measure, and certainly one that I support and have supported. It doesn't include obviously, utility companies, river ports, this type of thing. You know, it's not those types of functions that, you know, that we can't collectively do as individuals, but rather it's down at the retail and wholesale level. So that was one of I was a co-sponsor of that bill and have been for the last couple of years. And then Senate Bill 170, that was another one that the folks here at GRADD wanted me to talk about a little bit regarding the transportation of steel products. I really can't say a whole lot about that. It affects a local company that makes a steel product, and they needed a special permit to transport this product from their facility to the river port, to be loaded on rail, to be shipped to another manufacturing facility in the state of Kentucky. That's all I can say. Probably said more than I need to there, you know, but the bill obviously is in the public domain now, so I can say that much about it, but it helps one of our local companies. And so it's passed out of the Senate, it's in transportation in the House, and do any of y'all sell transportation? No? Oh, Doc, has that bill been called, do you know?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Scroll that thing down. Again, I'm not aware of it. It's posted, you know.
Yeah, posted March 18th, okay. So hopefully that'll get a hearing. I did talk with Chairman Collins, Hubie Collins on that. Yeah. So that's good. So hopefully we can get that measure passed, because it'd be a boom to the economy here in our community. Senate Bill 115, relating to the trafficking in heroin. You know, I'm going to be very honest with you folks about some of these bills. You know, in some sessions we'll pass bills that, for lack of a better term, or what some of us might refer to as soft on crime. You know, we take a little bit more benevolent route. We say, you know, maybe through, you know, an education process, through a treatment process, these types of things. That's a better avenue than incarceration and these types of things. And then sometimes, maybe when we engage in that thought process, we might go a little bit too far. And so we've taken the punitive component out of it. So what this does, what Senate Bill 115 does is it requires that a person who traffics in heroin be charged with a Class C felony for the first offense, and then a little more severe for the second offense. It goes back and addresses this continuing conversation that we have with heroin. We're so fortunate in this area that it's not the plague that it is in other parts of our state. And it's just a terrible plague, particularly in northern Kentucky, eastern Kentucky. It's leaching over into Jefferson County now, and huge problem. We're not insulated, but we just don't have the severity of the problem that other communities have. So it addresses that. It's kind of a rollback, some of the things we did in prior sessions. So at the end of the day, those are 4 bills that were identified that for me to speak about. Lift, I think, was I supposed to come in on lift?
I have to.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Dorsey. And I will tell you, I enjoy serving with Dorsey. You know, we don't always agree, but we always agree to disagree agreeably, and it's always good to chat with him and communicate. And I think it's fair to say that we have a great relationship and friendship in spite of us being on opposite sides of the aisles. But I think you all can appreciate that, and that's the way the process is supposed to work. So LIFT, yeah, so Dorsey wanted to know the progress of LIFT, and if I was going to hear it in my committee. Well, the answer to that is it has to be assigned to me first, and I don't know that it will, because leadership is struggling with that, and they hate it. Leadership hates it when I use this comment as a committee chair, and they tell me, don't ever say that, Joe, don't ever say that. But honestly, and I'll level with you folks, being a committee chair, it's really middle management up there. I mean, you have to know that, because leadership has a heavy hand in everything that we hear in a committee. So I can lobby to hear a bill. Most of them, they'll allow me to do that, but there are times they'll say, no, well, stop, we don't want that bill heard. And so, I mean, you know, I could go against their wishes, but I'm not going to be committee chair the next week, you know, so I'm not going to try that, I don't think, not yet anyway. So the answer to that question is LIFT, it has to be assigned to me. If it is assigned to me, I promise you one thing, I will make I will make every effort to get it heard. I'll make every effort to let it be heard in my committee, because I definitely think that it is one of those issues that deserves a hearing and a vote. Now, how I actually feel about it, well, I guess that'll be revealed on the day that we vote on it, but it certainly deserves a hearing. So thank you all. That's kind of my dog and pony show this morning. I appreciate you all coming out, and I'm going to yield the microphone to someone else.
Jack, thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here today. I always enjoy being at GRADD and visiting with some good folks, a lot of folks that are very much involved in their communities and growing their communities. So thank you all for coming out today and giving us a chance to dialogue with you. And I want to just quickly, before I talk about the bills that Jatin asked me about, it was good to have Jatin up earlier in the session. As all our colleagues know, there's a bill out there about ad districts, and candidly, I think it's unfair to a lot of the ad districts. This piece of legislation was primarily spawned by some concerns with bluegrass up in the Lexington area there, ad district. We're doing some things that folks may classify as improprietary, but as you all know here in GRADD, I mean, the audits that this bill was asking for are already done. The transparency that the bill is asking for is already done here in GRADD. So it was good to have Jatin up, and I'm just glad that that bill got changed a little bit to where it was more practical and not nearly as onerous as it could have been going out, because it was trying to paint all ad districts, Doug, with the same brush. Was certainly unfair. We're proud of GRADD and the tremendous job it does and the transparency that's already in place here. And I agree with Joe. I really enjoy working with our colleagues on both sides of the aisle. And he's right. Sometimes we don't agree because sometimes they're wrong. But no, I'm just kidding.
That did happen once. I remember that at one time.
But no, you can't get anything done in Frankfort unless it's bipartisan, and we need to remember that and work in that spirit, because that's what the folks that we're blessed to represent want us to do, is get the job done and work in a bipartisan way. Just quickly, as Dorsey and Joe mentioned, we are on the final days of our session. We've got about 4 working days left, and then we have 2 days for what we call concurrence, where we concur or not concur with the bill that came from the other chamber. And then we go into a veto recess, and then we come back for 2 final days to clean everything up. So we've got our own version of March Madness going on right now at the Kentucky House, trying to get everything completed, and there's still a lot of good bills. It's inevitable at the end. A lot of Senate bills get freed up from the House, and a lot of House bills get freed up over the Senate, and we're working to get those bills passed in the respective chambers and get some good legislation out on the board. I just want to quickly mention job one for us, beside the pension, is passing a 2-year budget, and we did that earlier this week in the House, and I won't spend a lot of time on that. You probably read about it, but just quickly on some highlights. We by and large concur with the governor's proposals in a lot of areas, but the key areas of disagreement and the key areas that we focused on that we don't think were emphasized enough in the governor's budget were in the education arena, where we redirected some funds into K through 12 for reasons that we think are very important to move our state forward and allow our people to have the skills that they need to be successful, to reinvent and reinvest into things like family resource centers and Read to Achieve, professional development, textbooks, those types of things. We also put more money back into post-secondary, which has been cut tremendously in the last 5 or 6 years, so we don't continue to have that disconnect where the state contributions go down and the tuition goes up. And as the tuition goes up, our young people have to incur more debt. So we put more money there. We responsibly addressed our #1 challenge, as Dorsey said, and that's the state pension plan. We moved to not only fund the KERS at 100% of the so-called ARC, as Dorsey has already defined, and we did a little bit in addition to that, but we did something that we thought needed to be done, and for the first time, we're funding in our budget 100% of the contribution that's been requested for the KTRS, the teachers. And we're doing that at 100% of the ARC. The governor's budget was about 66% of the ARC. We think that'll help them not have to liquidate so many of their assets to meet the payroll. We think they'll have more money to invest, and hopefully send a message, John, to our rating agencies that we're sincere about attacking that problem. And moving on, and we did that with no bonding and no new debt. We're just moving some money around that's within the budget to address that priority. Also in the area of debt, which a lot of Kentuckians are concerned with, our budget has about $76 million less in debt than the governor's budget does. Our debt ratio is a little bit better, so we felt like we moved responsibly there. And then in the rainy day fund, which is important to have a surplus going forward in the event that there's some unexpected expenditures, some unexpected items that come up. Right now, our rainy day fund is projected to be around a 208 or 209 million when we finish this fiscal year, but at the end of the next 2-year budget, our rainy day surplus would be about 283 million, which would be an all-time high. It would be higher than it's ever been, so we think we've been responsible there. And then finally, an element that we're funding that I'm really excited about is an initiative called Work Ready Kentucky, where we allow our high school students to get the skills they need through initially starting at a community college, where we will fund the last dollar of their tuition needs after they get their federal grants and their local grants. If there's still a gap in what they need to be able to go on to get a higher education and get a trade, to be work ready, we will provide that supplement to them. We think we're investing in them, and then eventually when they get a skill, they'll invest in us, and they'll be more attractive to induce businesses to come to Kentucky because we have a skilled workforce. So we're excited about that initiative, and hopefully we can get some traction as that moves through the process. On the bills that Jatin asked me about, I had House Bill 610, which relates to tax credits to promote Kentucky businesses. This really would just allow insurance companies, that would give them a tax credit if they would participate in a rural development fund, with the objective being investing more money in our rural communities, to incent them to invest more monies in rural communities where those communities can have an opportunity to grow their economies. I think this is a good initiative, and it gives a tax credit where we get the returns that will more than pay for that credit that we get, particularly in our rural communities, which have a tougher time attracting capital. House Bill 529, Jatin, was about relating to water resource policy. This would just establish a water resource board, I think an 11-member water resource board, with the ultimate objective of allowing our farmers to retain more of their water on their property. We've all heard about what's happened out in Colorado and California in particular, and Arizona, Doug, with a shortage of water. And this eventually will allow farmers to hopefully have a policy where they can impound the water that falls on their farm and keep that for their future irrigation needs, so that we don't end up with this water shortage. So I think that's a great initiative, particularly for our agricultural community. House Bill 202, relating to economic development incentives for the coal industry. This will just allow the coal industry and processors, as Jim knows, to qualify for sales and use tax exemptions and credits that other industries now enjoy through KIA, the Kentucky Enterprise Initiative Act, Joanne, that you're very familiar with. This will allow our coal industry to avail some of the benefits that are available to other industries, so that they can have those benefits and hopefully help our coal industry. And then finally, on House Bill 2 that Senator Joe was talking about on the local levy, the LIFT initiative, we passed that in the House. We think that is an excellent initiative to allow communities to have a voice in the future shape and direction of their community. It's all about quality of place and quality of life, and it gives the local citizens, unlike most other taxes, the ability to decide if they want to impose a levy on themselves to improve their community. I don't know anything that's more democratic or anything that's more vetted and founded in home rule than allowing local people to make a decision about their destiny. If they don't want to do anything, they don't have to. This just gives another tool in that toolkit to allow them to improve the quality of their community, because we're seeing obviously a lot less money coming to communities from the federal government and even less coming from the state government. So if communities are going to move forward and improve their economic attractiveness, they're going to have to invest in themselves. And that's what this initiative will allow them to do or not to do. 37 other states provide their citizens this vehicle. I think it's time that we allow that in Kentucky. Jatin, one bill that wasn't on the thing, on the sheet, that I'd like to talk about, that I think some folks here might be interested in, that, as my colleagues know, we passed in the House this week, but it's House Bill 290, which is a no excuse absentee. As you all know now, about 12 days before an election, you can go and absentee vote, Jane, but you have to have an excuse. You have to say and basically certify that you're going to be out of town or you're incapacitated in some way and have to come and vote absentee. That's an impediment to a lot of people voting, because think about this, what about a person on election day that's in a medical community, they have a 12-hour shift and they miss the window for voting? Or somebody that for that reason on that particular day, due to an injury or something, can't come and vote. And then candidly, what a lot of people end up doing is telling their clerks that, well, like, I'm going to be out of town, and then you see them on election day, they're in town. So they end up kind of fabricating the fact that they're gone. So we just think it's really important to incent and allow more people to get involved in the process. I think our country, our community, our states are better off if more people are engaged and more people vote, more people let their positions be heard and not have impediments where they can't vote, they can't be engaged. So this is a no excuse. So anybody could go 12 days prior to the election and not have to have some excuse. Anybody could go and absentee vote. We think we'll get more people in the process, and we think that's something that ought to be done to improve and give more people a chance to have their voices heard in the important area of electing and deciding on the future courses of our community. Just ending, we've got a lot of good bills that are still out there. I know we talked about P3. I hope we can get that through. That's important for the state moving forward. We still got some bills percolating over the Senate that would restore voting rights to felons that have served their debt to society so they can get reinstituted back into society. We've got an expungement bill that I know is working through the Senate now that would expunge a felony after a person served their sentence and not have that albatross around their neck for the rest of their life. They just made a youthful mistake, but they don't want it to be a lifetime sentence. So I'm hoping that we can get that passed. But at the end, I'm confident, as Joe and Dorsey have mentioned, that we can get a budget. We have to get one. That's the most important responsibility that we have, and I'm confident we'll discharge it in a bipartisan way. We have our priorities. The governor had his. The Senate will have theirs. We'll go into a conference committee. We'll find middle ground and a way to continue the momentum for our state and help our communities and our state be more successful and more prosperous. And I think we'll try to do that in a bipartisan way, which is what we need to do. So thank you all for the time to be here today. Thank you for giving me the privilege to represent the 14th legislative district. I have the eastern part of Davis County and all of Ohio County. And it's a privilege to serve you all, and look forward to your good questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, some things that are happening. As you know, the budget just passed out of the House this week, and one of the things for our area, there are a lot of counties that do have coal. Davis County has a little bit. Henderson and Union and Webster all have coal, and for many years we have coal severance money that's supposed to come back to the counties. And when that was passed, I think in the 70s, the idea was that coal is a depletable resource, and once it's gone, the communities need to build and develop industry and improve the quality of life in those communities, so that when the coal is gone, they can do other things. And what's happened is the coal mining in Kentucky has really suffered a big hit in the last 7 years, and I think the number of people actually mining now is probably lower than any time since 1950 or whatever, and the amount of money, the amount of tonnage that we have is lower than it's been in the last 50 or 60 years. So what was happening was that our coal severance tax money was going down. And we were to the point to where in the second year of the budget, there was not going to be any coal severance money going back to the coal-producing counties. And part of the reason for that was you had this crazy formula where we took money off the top, and then we split it up, half to go to the state and half to the counties. But then we had all these other projects out there that were kind of off the middle. And so what happened then was there never was 50% of the money ever going back to coal-producing counties. It was really a very small percentage that got back there. And so in both budgets, the Republicans, we had a House budget, and Representative Miles, I worked with we were on a committee to look at coal severance and try to see what we could do there. She chaired that. And we decided that we would take some of those off-the-middle projects off. And the only thing that we funded out of coal severance was the debt service for some bonding projects that we did several years ago for water and sewer, and then the money for the Department of Local Government to actually administer the coal severance. We kept that in there, and so we were sending more and more money back to the coal-producing counties. The House Democrat budget kind of did something similar, and they were able to increase the 50% match to the counties, or 50% of the money back to the counties, to where I think they're increasing that to at some point 100% in future budgets. And so we do have more coal severance money coming back to our county. So that's a good thing. The only other thing I want to mention a little bit is you may have heard there was a bill that just passed the Senate last week. It was mine safety. There were two of them. One of them really didn't do anything. Up until now, we had put in the budget several years ago that coal mines have to, their foremen have to have safety training, and a lot of your large companies can do that themselves. But we were requiring that the state do that training for safety training for mine foremen, and this would allow, still lets companies do that if they want to, but it would allow some of the larger companies to be able to do that training themselves, and that's not uncommon for a lot of industries to be able to train their own people. The second one actually would kind of eliminate the duplication of state inspectors for coal mines. We do have MSHA, federal inspections. Some states do not have state inspectors. One of the things that was happening, though, was the number of coal mines went down, the number of employment went down. We actually saw figures to where the number of inspectors based on a mechanized mining unit. And I think that's what we're looking at here, is that a mechanized mining unit is a unit in the coal mines that has a certain bit of equipment that actually does performs that task. And when they got to the point where they were going to be 2 inspectors at the mines for every mechanized mining unit. And for instance, Riverview and Representative Miles' district, they have 8 mechanized mining units. So that meant that you were going to have a day, you'd have maybe 15 to 16 mine inspectors, including federal and state, at that particular mine. Now, a few years ago, we passed a mine safety bill that actually increased the number of mine inspections from 3 to 6. And for most people who are used to OSHA coming in once or twice a year, or maybe once every other year or whatever, and being there for a day, really thought that that's what we were talking about. But it really wasn't. One mine inspection for a large company like Alliance Coal would actually include 2 inspectors underground every day for 30 days. That's just one inspection. So it's not what you might think. And so we really got to the point where, these mine inspectors, especially the federal ones, they actually have a parking place at the mine with their name on it. So it's almost like they're an employee there all of the time. And we really don't think that, we certainly won't do that. I don't know if that bill will pass or not, but I just want to mention to you that if you hear that, that you do understand some of the reasoning behind that at least needs to be looked at. And so, but with that, I will be happy to answer any questions a little bit later. Thank you.
We have covered 1,407 legislative bills during this session, and the session is not over. That's a lot. A lot of times people ask me, a lot of times people will stop me in a restaurant or at McDonald's or Walmart and says, "Can I ask you about a bill?" And they ask me, sometimes the bill is not on top of your head. I have to go back and research that before I answer it. We have about 8 days left. As Representative Thompson indicated, 4 legislative days in the books. Then we're going to have meetings for 2 days. Then we'll go to the governor for 10. Then it'll come back for us to override what the governor's going to. We will have to have override, because he said he's not going to agree with anything that's not in his original budget. And there's stuff in our budget that's not in his original budget. So there's going to be an interesting last 2 days. But that's coming. What else I can tell you about this? 290, early voting. I asked to speak about, and Representative Thompson's already talked about it. I do agree with that. There's no magic to this stuff. There's a number of states that have early voting already. Matter of fact, if you've been watching the Republican primaries, you've seen states that had early voting. Florida's one of them. They said they had roughly 1 million people that voted already in Florida before the primary election day. That way it gives more participation. We have to find some way to get more people to come to the polls. And having people vote 12 days early, I don't see a problem with that. Because the only problem with that may be there is having the clerk's office open on Saturday. I'm not sure everybody has money for that, but that would be the only problem that I would see with it. Okay? We talked about, they asked me to talk about House Bill 5 and House Bill 6 that has to do with health insurance. That passed the House, but it's gone over to the Senate. I can tell you point blank, it's not going anyplace. You don't have to worry about looking to see if that's going to pass, because it's not. But anyway, we represent the people on the House side. There's 100 of us. We represent 43,000 people each, and that's what we do. We try to help the little guy, and that bill roughly helps about 400,000 people in this state. But it will not pass the Senate, and the governor will not sign off on it. So just so you are aware. I'm trying to think if there was anything else I can talk about. I've talked about the dates, things of that nature. That's basically it. I'll hang around. I know a lot of people are concerned about there's not a lot of people here. There wasn't a lot of people at the previous, the Chamber of Commerce breakfast either. I don't worry about that. I watch TV at night, just like Donald Trump does. And I noticed that when he's talking, there's people fighting in the audience, there's police with pit bulls, you know, that kind of stuff going on. I figure if the public's angry with what you're doing, they would show up. Because I've seen that happen. I figure people don't care what we're doing. You know, not extremely, I mean, they're not totally happy, but they're not extremely upset. Upset enough to come out and start marching up and down the street where you have to have police out there. The thin blue line. But anyway, thanks very much for allowing me to serve as your state representative. I represent District 13, City of Owensboro, Daviess County. Thanks very much.
You know, again, I'll have to say the people that have already spoken has given you a good summary of what all's going on. I would say that it is very, very important that we do address these pension problems. And you know, the teachers unfortunately do not have Social Security as most of us do. I draw a Social Security check myself. Again, I guess that's because I did pay into Social Security and the teachers don't. So, but they have been paying into their retirement, and it's so important that we reassure them that their pension is going to be there for them. Just like I want my Social Security to be there for me, and I think basically our teachers deserve to have that security and that feeling, and that's what we're trying to do with our budget on this occasion. You know, one of the reasons why I went to Frankfurt was because I tried for 40 years. At the time, I guess I was elected, I tried for 30 years to improve the health of the people that I was taking care of. And of course, the #1 health problem that we still have in our country is the use of tobacco and the use of tobacco products. And it's sad that Kentucky still is right there at the top of the list. We still have more heart disease, more lung cancer, in fact, more all types of cancers. We have made some progress in colon cancer because we're doing a better job of screening. And actually, we are beginning to make progress in the treatment of lung cancer. You know, I think we would have within our grasp the possibility that within many of our lifetimes we will have basically a significant improvement in what we can do for cancers. And I'm looking forward to that. I have several bills addressing the use of tobacco. And unfortunately, most of them are going to set just exactly where they are at this time. They're not going to move forward. And that's sad because we do need to do some things. I've noticed that California, I think, and Hawaii now, and many cities have preventing our people before they're 21 from using tobacco. And at least that lets them mature and maybe gives them a little more brain power and maybe lets them think a little bit more about what they're doing. You know, I had a letter kind of criticizing my stand on that in the paper over in Henderson. And the young fellow that was a physician, he said, that's a habit. Well, you know, unfortunately, I wish that smoking was a habit. But it's not. It's just as addicting as heroin and cocaine and all of these other substances that people get addicted to. And, you know, we do still need to address that. And that's one of the things that I would love to do. Childhood obesity is another problem that we have. And that's something that, again, I will continue to work with and work on. You know, the health of our state is important not only for our people, but also it's important for the economic impact that it has upon our people. And, you know, if we have better health, well, you're going to have more dollars to spend on things that are a whole lot more enjoyable than taking care of a COPD or taking care of a lung cancer or taking care of heart disease. Again, I think the other fellows have addressed a lot of the bills. I'll have to apologize if a letter was sent. Somehow I missed out on what I was supposed to talk on. If you have questions, though, please do not hesitate to ask. You know, we got Tommy Thompson up here. You saw what a great job he did this morning. He is a very strong speaker, and he was our leader, and I think he's going to come back into leadership next year. I'm predicting that because he's just outstanding. And basically, again, we have a lot of people that care about each other, and I think we're very fortunate. Again, I do appreciate Joe. I think Joe Boeing does a good job along with Dorsey over in the Senate. Again, we don't always see eye to eye, but I guarantee you this, each one of us cares about you and wants to see our state move forward in a positive direction. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
I appreciate being here with you today, and I won't go over the bills. Like we said, there's several bills up there, and the people that are here today, I'm assuming that you all are here on specific interests that you all have, and I would prefer that we went ahead and got closer to our questions and let you all ask us what you all want to ask and things like that. So I appreciate the opportunity to serve. I serve all of Union, part of Henderson, and part of Davis County. I will bring up on behalf of the ones up here that share Henderson County, we do have a recently appointed judge executive for the place of the passing of Judge McCormick. So we do want to welcome Brad Snyder as the new judge executive in Henderson County, that he'll be serving, I know, with you all with a lot of the GRADD things coming up. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'll let Dean play cleanup for a moment, and then we'll get on to your questions since you all are here today. And thanks for coming out.
Happy to be here today. Glad you all had us. And you know, it is my first budget, so it's my first. It's my second year in the House, my first budget. So I have learned it's a process. And right now we're in stage 3 of that process, and a couple more stages to go in that process. But it has been a little lengthy, and I'm looking forward to the end. I know my family's looking forward to me to only have one more full week. My 18-year-old daughter, she was sending me messages this week, just wanted to know how many more weeks, Daddy, are you going to be gone? So, and my 14-year-old is the same way. In fact, this year I got an iPhone just so I could FaceTime with them. I'd had a BlackBerry in the past and an Android phone, and they don't have the FaceTime, so I had to switch to an Apple just to FaceTime with my 2 teenage daughters and my wife. So they're looking forward to being home, so we hope we can wrap up and get a good budget out for the people and the other legislation that we have. So briefly, I'll talk about I'm a Gulf War veteran. I carry a lot of veteran bills in the House, and that's really important to me, and I think veterans are important to a lot of you all. And so we have some good veterans bills. In fact, one this year that I carried was a bill that in the state of Kentucky doesn't certify service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, and the bill I had, it does that, and the Senate actually heard that this week, and they passed it out on consent, so hopefully it makes it through to their floor and passes. I think it's a step forward to try to help service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses in the state, which is important for really all the state, but a portion of my district is, I go up right to Fort Knox, so I have a lot of retired military people and people who have served our country in that area, so it's important for them, and especially, you know, in the Fort Campbell area as well. Another piece of legislation I carried this year had passed the House 7 times and had not been heard in the Senate is a bill that would give inline death benefits to EMS and EMT workers. And that bill, we had it in the House. It was House Bill 54, and it got named the John Mackey bill, which he was the in Nicholasville, Jessamine County. He got killed in the line of duty as a paramedic, and this bill was named after him. And the Senate also had a bill, and we went ahead and heard the Senate's bill. And yesterday we passed that bill out of the House, and yesterday we actually passed 2 Senate bills out of the House on the floor. And that was one of them, and I think that's a really good bill for the state and for those you who know EMT, EMS workers. There was a couple of things that wasn't in that bill, and I'm sure that Senator Bowen will help me work on next year. Maybe we can see if we can get those in. It does include all EMT, EMS workers that work for a county or city government. It does not include nonprofits. Breckenridge County happens to have a nonprofit. Breckenridge County is, unlike a lot of counties in the state, we don't have a lot of industry. We're blessed to be beside Hancock County. We're blessed to be near Owensboro. We're blessed to be near Fort Knox and Louisville, where a lot of our people drive from Breckenridge County to work, Meade County. But unfortunately, because of that, we have no occupational tax in Breckenridge County, so we have very limited funds in our county government. Therefore, you know, we don't have a county-funded or city-funded EMS, EMT. We have a nonprofit. And nonprofit in the bills that we did pass are not covered. Also, a lot of the communities have rescue workers who are volunteer workers, and those aren't covered. And so hopefully moving forward in years coming, we can look at maybe adding them to that so that they get that benefit. It's an $80,000 death benefit. We look back, this happens less than 1 time a year over the past 20 years that one of those people get killed in the line of duty. So hopefully I think it's the right thing to do. Just explain that just a little bit more if you were a fireman, a police officer have this. So if you had an accident on the side of the road and a fireman was there and a police officer and an EMT worker, and someone veered over and hit and killed all 3 of those, the EMT worker, before this bill passed, would not receive that $80,000 in-line death benefit. So I was happy to get this passed yesterday, and I think it's really good for those people who care for us and take care of us in time of need. Thank you very much.